This is Perspective on Athletics, big thinking for small colleges. Sit back and enjoy this episode. Great, Scott. Thanks for joining us today on Perspective on Athletics. I know you're a busy guy as a president, but really appreciate you taking time.
Glad to. Thank you for the invitation, Mark.
You're welcome. And I'm excited because involving presidents in this Perspective on Athletics project is very important because athletics plays such an important role on many campuses, but in particular small colleges these days for a variety of different reasons that we can talk about. So I want to talk about those things, but before we do that, I'm curious, you've been around higher ed for a long time. You've been at 3 different colleges as a president, and you've worked in other positions and other capacities. But you've always, I think, been a fan and engaged in athletics wherever you've been. And with all the things that we're hearing and reading and seeing in the media today about athletics, and most of it's bad, I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts on just where collegiate athletics is today. What is going on, and where do you see things and what the issues may be?
Well, you know, athletics has been an important part of my life. I was a college athlete at West Virginia Wesleyan, and right out of school was a sports writer and a columnist, and served as an SID at a couple of institutions. So I went to a reunion 2 years ago with my college class, and they said, "You're a college president? We always thought you'd end up being a Division I athletic director." Some point I went astray. I don't know where. There are a number of concerns in college athletics right now, and I think it comes from the O'Bannon case. It comes from the quarterback leading the charge from Northwestern University, leading the discussion of unionization. There's the divide that's been created by conference jumping at the Division I level. And while my career has really been as president of Division II and then 2 Division III institutions, what happens on all 3 levels should be something that's important to all of us, because it does trickle to the other divisions. When a student at a major university is having problems, at any university is having problems coming up with money to pay for books, and they open the paper the next day and they see their institution is spending $7, $9, $11 million for an early exit fee to go to a new athletic conference, it causes students, parents, and legislators a pause, and that pause centers around where are colleges going and what's happening with college athletics. And I got to tell you, that's a big concern to me. We're looking at cost containment throughout higher education, and to see some of the out-of-control salaries that are being paid to coaches, some of the costs that are associated with jumping from conference to conference, some of the sponsorship fees, those are very legitimate concerns, and it makes me glad that I'm president of a Division III school and not dealing with some of those issues that Division I presidents are dealing with right now.
There are a number of those things that are prominent, like you say, and that's all we typically hear about because that's what the media will cover. But you're absolutely right. I think that they do affect what happens on smaller campuses as well. So as you think about things for your own campus, and you've been at Bethany about, is it 7 years now?
7 years,
7 years. You know, how does that manifest itself with your own student athletes or your own coaches? What are some of the things that you see or in ways that it affects your own program and student athletes?
Well, you know, I'm one of the few college presidents that when our athletic department has recruitment day, I'm there. And, for a couple different reasons. At a Division III school, intercollegiate athletics is an important part of the recruitment and retention model of the institution. And at a Division III school, because we don't offer athletic scholarships, it's a part of the fabric, unlike Division I and Division II institutions. And we like to say to parents and to athletes when they come for a recruitment day, you're not seeing large sponsorships, you're not playing in a stadium with 60 or 100,000 people. You're coming to an institution because you're a student first, an athlete second, and you're getting that comprehensive learning experience. We have many of the same concerns that all 3 divisions have, but At the same time, the Division III school is placing an emphasis on keeping controls on the amount of out-of-classroom time that's taken through practices and the non-traditional seasons, and making sure that a student can still benefit from all aspects of college life and not just have to declare when they go to school, I'm going to be a player in sport X and I'm going to devote my entire year. We want our athletes to join fraternities and sororities. We want them to be student government officers. We want them to be involved in an international experience, and they can do that at a Division III school, whereas I think it's awfully difficult to do. And we want two sport athletes. A number of individuals come to a school like Bethany College, and I hear the story personally from them. I was recruited by a Division I institution, and I played sport X, something like soccer. But I also wanted to run indoor and outdoor track, and I couldn't do that at a Division I institution, but I can do that at Division III. So, I do sound like a walking, talking advertisement for Division III, but I think it brings all the best of intercollegiate sports together in one division.
I think you're right, and I think that's the unfortunate thing that I mentioned. Those great things about Division III athletics never get covered in the media, so it's always dominated by the negative things. But I want to ask you, going back to some of the things that you mentioned, concerns about where athletics is headed in general, and you rub your colleagues with presidents at other colleges and universities. They have to deal with these things real time. Talk for me just a minute about the role of leadership in intercollegiate athletics, and where is that leadership to come from? Is it at the athletic director level? What role do you think presidents should play in the leadership of athletics moving forward?
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier, this is my 23rd year as a college president and my third presidency. I've always had intercollegiate athletics report directly to me. And I think it's important for presidential involvement, and some conferences and even the NCAA to a certain extent talks about what presidential involvement is. I don't think we go far enough with that presidential involvement. I've always had the athletic director report to me, and I have regular interactions each week with that individual. And I'm very careful when I make the appointment of a director of intercollegiate athletics who I think doesn't just talk the talk, but walks it also, who is a good fit with the institution, who understands the college's culture, and who on a regular basis is living the mission and purpose of the individual college. And that's the most important thing. A president needs to have an athletic director who walks the walk, who talks it also, and who the president has trust in to bring the important issues to the president for appropriate action.
But you do feel that presidents have a role to play in the guidance and I don't want to say management, but moving forward with athletics?
I think, much like the characterization that presidents and boards of trustees have, the presidents need to have their nose in and most of the time their fingers out. They need to be asking the right questions, really demanding the right responses, setting the parameters, setting the goals, and holding the athletic director, the athletic administration, and the coaches accountable for fulfilling those goals. And by goals, I'm not necessarily talking about wins and losses. I'm talking about recruitment goals, retention goals, academic progress goals, voluntarily meeting some types of institutional expectations that are tied into the mission. And that's the president's role to set that tone.
Got it. And that's a great transition for me, too, because what I want you to speak to next is really looking at what athletics does within the context of a small liberal arts college or any small college or university for that matter. You already touched upon a few of those things, whether it's enrollment, management, recruiting, and retention. But where do you see, and you've been at 3 smaller campuses, where do you see the biggest role for athletics? What are the things that it really serves the institution with, and how does it fit in to the overall institutional mission?
Well, back in, I'm going to say, the 60s and 70s, and maybe this is another appreciation that I have for Division III. In the 60s and 70s, there was a feeling that if there was an emphasis on athletics on a college campus, that it was a dumbing down of the institution, that the people who came to the school, athletes, weren't very smart. They were just into athletics. And an appreciation that I've had in being president of two Division III schools is that some of the best leaders on college campuses come from the intercollegiate athletic department, and they come from parents who had an interest in athletics and academics, who, as they were growing these young men and women, put an emphasis on both. Just thinking the last year and a half here at Bethany College, our valedictorian this past year was a young lady who led the volleyball team to 4 consecutive ECAC championships. She had a 4.1 grade point average on a 4.0 scale, a 2-time academic All-American. She's now working on her doctorate at the University of Pittsburgh. The Carfer Prize, which is given to the best overall senior, was a young African-American kid who came from Cumberland, Maryland, a single-parent family, 9 children. He's now in law school at the University of Pittsburgh. He was a wide receiver on the football team. This year's probable valedictorian is another receiver from the football team with a 4.0 who will go on to Vanderbilt for graduate studies. Those are the kind of stories that you're hearing now. You didn't hear as much of that back in the 1960s and 1970s. And at Division III schools, there are a lot of stories that are like that, where there are tremendous stories of students who were students first and picked Division III because they wanted to have that balance. They wanted to be able to have the commitment to academics. They wanted to have a social life, and they also wanted to participate in sports at a certain level.
Right. In what I'm capturing from your comments is that really these types of students that come to campus are enhancing the overall campus environment for everything that they bring to the institution. I'm curious how that plays out, though. Sometimes with campuses that I've worked with, student athletes oftentimes are anonymous in the sense that they don't make it widely known necessarily that they're a student athlete to their faculty members, their professors. And when they find out that they actually are student athletes, many people are just blown away that, well, you're one of my best students. And do you find that on your campus?
Well, it's really hard on our campus. We're 1,000 students. We are purely a resident. We're a very typical top-tier residential liberal arts college, and we pride ourselves, while it's a 45-building, 1,300-acre campus, everybody knows each other. And I think the campus population as a whole notices that some of the better leaders do come from the intercollegiate athletic program. And there's no embarrassment over that. We're proud of the tradition that we've had here in producing outstanding all-around people.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever run into friction or resistance from faculty or alumni or board members that perhaps you spend a little bit too much time talking about athletics or too much time at games?
I think the faculty here understand the role in the overall life of the institution. Now, the pushback or the commentary you might get is when you do upgrades to facilities and you add artificial turf and a all-weather track and lighting and locker rooms and weight rooms. Sometimes there's that question of why devote resources to that area rather than to an academic area. But it's up to us to explain that often the donors who provide funds for that are interested in the particular program because they had a successful experience at our institution or at another one. And once those facilities are completed and they see that, for instance, we had no lights and no artificial turf, we added that, and all of a sudden practices moved into the evenings, which meant fewer concerns about tutoring and class time periods during the afternoon. When you see that the overall recreation program is using those facilities in the evening because they don't have to worry about everybody sees a benefit out of that.
No, so true, and I think eventually they do come to that realization that it really plays an important role. I want to ask you to talk about the role of coaches. And I think what I've always believed is that coaches play such an important role, not just in the the strategic development of their athletic skills, they play such an important role in the overall educational experience of each student athlete. Can you speak a little bit about the role that coaches play, you believe?
Well, you know, how many times as a college president or our chief advancement officer or our alumni director, when they're out all over the country visiting with people and they say, what do you hear from Coach so-and-so? Hiring the right coach is something that will create a legacy that will go on for a long time. I know 3 years ago I went back to my alma mater for a recognition there, and there was my 90-year-old cross-country coach from college who had devoted his entire professional career to West Virginia Wesleyan College, a Division II institution. And to see all the people at this alumni event hover around this 90-year-old man, and many were quoting things that he said associated with practice. In 1977 saying to us, you should always devote 30 minutes a day to yourself for exercise because you'll live a long life if you do that. Valuable lessons about life that you carry forward. But those individuals, if you hire properly, they're also alumni ambassadors for the college for a long time to come. You shouldn't be so concerned at, say, the Division III level about hiring somebody who will win for a 4-year period and be gone. You need to hire somebody that is a good fit for the institution, understands the philosophy, is looking for a longer-term commitment. And we're not seeing individuals anymore who are staying for 30 and 40 years like you did, 15, 20, 25 years ago. But you want somebody that'll be long enough continuity that those good feelings are there for alma mater for a number of years, and that's another important role that coaches play. Character building. You want coaches that teach good ethical conduct and behavior. I'm a little bit unusual from the context of a Division III president in that I'm in favor of an expanded non-traditional season. And I know that's not a popular thing at most Division III schools, but when you're in a rural setting like we are here at Bethany College, the non-traditional season I see as something that keeps a student engaged in the campus lifestyle. And, as long as it's not creating injuries, I think it's something that should be explored from that avenue as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there is a lot of debate still about that and the stressors, but we find, and if you ask student athletes, they prefer and do better in school during their sports season than out of season.
And I find the same thing.
And that is very common. And if they have extra time on their hands, what are they going to do? They're usually going to go work out or work to perform better in their sport. So why not take advantage of that passion and use it for productive purposes? So interesting. I appreciate your comments on that. We talked briefly about the challenges that are on the horizon for college athletics generally, but do you see any specific things that small colleges are going to have to deal with that are coming down the line, regardless of whether it's trickling down from Division I or not? What are some of the things that you see for small college athletics moving forward?
Well, you are seeing at small colleges now the facilities game that starts at the Division I level is trickling down to Division III. And I am one of the more active presidents in showing up at away games and seeing facilities on other campuses and visiting with presidents at other campuses when I'm doing that and hearing presidents say, competitor X has just built an 82,000 square foot multi-purpose arena that will have an indoor batting facility for baseball in addition to basketball facility and aquatic centers and the like. And when some schools do it, it grows in popularity. And college students these days, whether it's Division I, II, or III, when they're in high school, they are looking for modern, clean, flashy amenities. And that amenities game can lead to increased expenditure, which puts increased pressure on colleges to come up with funds to keep pace in the facility area.
Is there a way to combat that? Or is there a way to manage that somehow, or is that just the reality?
I think it's the reality. Much like the salaries game at the Division I level, everybody criticizes the institutions that pay the real big salaries, and many of the people who are criticizing are the ones who the next time you turn the corner are doing it. I don't know that you can voluntarily get people to stop either one of those games.
Yeah, no, there's no turning back.
Yeah.
And anything else that you see for small colleges, either on the challenge side or the real opportunity that we should be paying attention to?
Well, I think there's a bit of, and I don't want to call it a divide, there's a shift occurring between, say, the top 50 to 75 liberal arts colleges academically and maybe the rest of the group. And there was a discussion a few years ago about having a subdivision within Division III. Some conferences are putting increased, I don't want to call it oversight, but tougher standards in place, shorter non-traditional seasons, restrictions on postseason competition, number of hours in a week that are even tougher than travel limitations. I'm seeing a group of colleges nationally, and I wish I could put a figure, whether it's 80, 100, 120 out of 400 and some Division III institutions that are voluntarily moving in that direction. Where that leads us 5, 7, 10 years down the road, I don't know. The discussion of a subdivision failed, but I am seeing clusters of institutions that are voluntarily going in that direction.
Yeah. It's interesting. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, because every few years it seems to rise up again and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. You know, the last segment I want to talk to you about here is, it's kind of fun for me because I'm no longer an athletic director, but whenever I was an athletic director, wherever I was, we all are concerned about what our president is thinking. And, how is he or she going to respond to this? Or what are they expecting if it hasn't been made clear? So I want to ask you about, what do you think ADs should know about presidents and what you're thinking? Because I think many of us sit back and we do wonder, and if the management or the communication or the direction isn't as strong as maybe it could be, perhaps, sometimes athletic directors are kind of just going what they see best, but you might be able to offer some insight to what ADs should be thinking about or learn about what presidents are thinking.
Yeah, I've had 4 athletic directors in 23 years. I think that's the number 4, which is pretty good staying power. I spend a lot of time with our athletic directors just talking philosophically, and we talk back and forth. And I'm not looking for an athletic director that's a yes man. I'm looking for an athletic director who philosophically is on the same page and is a step ahead of me in thinking about items that are critical to our department, who understands what the college is about, who, when vacancies occur, has a radar up that is looking for an individual who will be a good fit, and that when we hire someone, recognizing that Division III schools, again, don't pay the monster salaries that a lot of the D1 and some D2 schools are paying, that we're finding people that genuinely have an interest in coming and being a part of our campus community, involving themselves in the community, involving themselves with the student population. And that's what I look for in an AD. I look for somebody who has a good ethical conscience. We want to be competitive in our sports, but at the same time, we want to be competitive not just on the court or on the playing field, but in the classroom as well. I look for an AD who's a step ahead of me and is letting me know of potential problems that are coming, rather than coming to me and saying, "We've got a problem, what do I do?" I like problem solvers. And I like coaches who understand the philosophy of the institution and are holding coaches accountable to the standards. We've got, by sports standard, a large athletic department. We have 22 intercollegiate sports and an equestrian club team, which in the state of West Virginia is the largest number of sports of any college, Division I, II, or III in the state of West Virginia. The athletic director that we have here is a graduate of Bethany, who was a longtime sports information director, and a sort of an unusual trend that I'm seeing start a little bit more. Our AD was a long-term SID And so he knows all the players and coaches from a different perspective. And that perspective has enabled him to really lead a program and build a program that I'm awfully proud of. He knows how to promote the things that we want promoted as an institution. He knows the best foot to put forward, and he knows how to write goals and hold people accountable to them.
That's great. You know, I think you've talked about the great things about Division III and I think what is important to this experience. But I know athletic directors and coaches, they're all competitive. I mean, you're in it to win ball games, and that plays in at some role. But what about winning for you as a president? Where does that factor in when you think about athletics at Bethany or any other small college?
Yeah, we like to be competitive. We want to be representative. We want to be in every game, every contest, and be competitive within our conference. But there isn't a pressure on our coaches here to win at all costs. You know, our greatest source of pride this year is our women's volleyball team. They won their fourth straight ECAC championship, won 30 matches for the third or fourth year in a row. They did it with a team that had a team grade point average of 3.43. 6 ladies on the team had perfect 4.0 grade point averages. We probably celebrate that more than beating our primary foe in football for the first time in 20-some years, or extending our streak over that same foe in basketball. To celebrate the overall accomplishment of a team like women's volleyball that wins on the court, but wins off the court as well in producing outstanding leaders and outstanding students. So we take all those things into consideration when evaluating each of our individual sports.
That's great, and I think it's it's an important piece to the job. I mean, like I say, we're all competitive and people want to win, and I've always found that for coaches, they always want to talk about winning and what are we going to do to help me win until they're not winning one particular season. Then they want to talk about all the other things that go into the job.
College presidents are like coaches. We didn't get to our positions without having self-motivation and personal drive. And the bottom line for a college president is we want our institution to win. We want to be competitive in the marketplace. We want to attract top faculty, top students, and top donors to be involved in our institutions. And that's very similar to what we're trying to do in intercollegiate athletic. And athletic departments do play a good role in creating an atmosphere that's supportive of that presidential agenda. Yeah. You think about the atmosphere that college football or college basketball creates. It gives us an opportunity to have a venue to entertain and to engage people in the life of the institution, and that's important to all of us.
Oh, it's great. That's a great analogy, and I appreciate you making those comments. We're just about out of time here, but I did want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to share from your perspective as a sitting college president as it relates to the world of athletics today?
Well, my start was as a college athlete and then as a sports writer and a columnist, and I enjoy college athletics because I wake up every morning with a smile on my face because of the interactions that I have with students. And that's what we're in the student business. And I like to use the analogy that one of my presidential colleagues used, where he said everybody has 168 hours in a week. And 18 are spent in the classroom, 42 to 50 are spent sleeping, and it's up to our institutions to create a partnership with each student for the remaining 100 hours. And those 100 hours, whether it be intercollegiate sports, fraternities, sororities, student government, club activities, we're in the education business. We're in building future leaders. That's our business, and we want to do it well, and athletics plays an important part in that.
That's a great way to wind up this segment, and we really appreciate you taking time again, Scott. Again, this is Dr. Scott Miller, president of Bethany College in West Virginia. Thanks so much for joining us on Perspective on Athletics.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure joining you.
Great.